Okay, convert. Some recording options cannot be. Okay, that's the audio. That's fine. Yeah, okay, we are showing a little behind the curtain here.
No, they don't
oh,
do that.
Recording's going.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Ha.
We can edit later.
That's right. Good morning, and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Burns, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. And next to me is Michael Sauers, our Technology Innovation Librarian here at the Library Commission. The NCompass Live is the Commission's weekly online event where we cover any sort of anything maybe of interest to librarians across the state. We do these sessions every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time, and they are all recorded, so if you are unable to attend live on Wednesday mornings, that's fine. We have a huge list of recordings that you can go back and watch later. And we do a mixture of things here on the show. We do presentations, interviews, we bring in guest speakers, sometimes little mini training things, whatever. Anything we think that, could be useful to people. And once a month we do our Tech Talk. Well, Michael does his Tech Talk. Either technology
but Krista doesn't let me do it by myself.
No,
it's good. That's a good thing.
He is our Technology Innovation Librarian here at the Library Commission, as I said. So once a month he talks about tech news of the month that has come up and some other things, sometimes interviews, whatever. So I will hand over to you to talk about what we're doing, what you've got for us today.
All right. Thank you, all of you who are here live, because we usually have some sort of description up in advance of what I'm going to talk about.
I did it yesterday.
And we gave you less than 24 hours notice this time. So basically, most of you signed up blind. So hey, that's a good thing. I'm flattered. Thank you very much for your time.
Everyone needs to know about technology, so
yes,
it's an important topic.
And that's what we're talking about today. And one of the reasons the description was kind of last minute is Chris and I both have been very busy the last couple of weeks. What we're going to talk about today with four guests that we have on the line is a result of basically what we were doing all last week. Last Monday and Tuesday, Nebraska held their technology planning summer camp here in Lincoln and in 3 other remote locations across the state. And Krista was, I will say, is instrumental in organizing the whole darn thing. So she was a little busy getting that, food for 4 locations, hotel rooms for 4 locations, all those fun things. And I got to make sure the technology worked, so kind of I was a little involved too. And then Krista and I were invited to participate in Colorado's equivalent of that, which was the BEST conference, which was Broadband Sustainability,
Broadband E-Rate,
Broadband E-Rate Sustainability Technology. Yes, BEST, which is basically the same conference, but in Colorado, for Colorado folks instead of Nebraska folks. So for all last week, Krista and I were pretty much neck deep in technology planning and how do you do it? What do you do? What technology do you plan for? We kind of touched upon some training issues, which I think might actually end up coming up here. And so I have on the line 4 folks who were attendees at these pair of conferences, 3 from Nebraska and 1 from Colorado. I've also got in front of me some of the evaluation comments that came through from the Nebraska conference. I haven't seen Colorado's yet. No. And I've highlighted a few that I think can start some interesting conversation amongst our attendees. Some of them were thought-provoking to me. And I'm not saying bad, not saying good either. I'm just saying thought-provoking. So what I'd like to do before we get started is I'm going to kind of go through our 4 panelists. We have Pam, Tiffany, Nicole, and Veronica. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on your mics kind of one at a time here. And if I could have each of you just kind of briefly introduce yourself, who are you, what library you're from, what do you do there, and what is your role, if any, in the technology in your library? So if we can kind of answer that. And I'm going to start with Nicole. Are you there?
I am. Hi, Michael. I'm Nicole Lawless, and I'm the director of the Madison Public Library. And my role is that I am also my own resident geek, so I do all my own technology.
Okay, great. Next on the line we have Pam.
Hi, good morning. I'm Pam Bohmfalk. I'm the assistant director at the Hastings Public Library. I'm sort of a jack of all trades, master of none, but one of the things that I do is all of our technology, keeping all of our equipment going, networking, all that kind of good stuff, which includes training and teaching public classes, computer classes to the public.
Okay, great. And next on the line we have Tiffany.
Hi, yeah, I'm Tiffany with the Alliance Public Library in Nebraska, and I am the Tech Services librarian here. I also kind of do multiple roles. I'm the cataloger as well as kind of the go-to tech person. I am an accidental techie, so I kind of am learning as I go.
Okay, great. And last but not least from Colorado, we have Veronica on the line.
Good morning. My name is Veronica Smith, and I work at the Westminster Public Library. And my job here is the automation coordinator. We have a very small department of 2.5 people, and we take care of all of the technology in the library. We say we do everything except the phones, although sometimes we end up troubleshooting those as well.
You never know.
And that next phone system might be completely tied to the internet, so you're biding your time at that point.
Exactly.
Okay, so I mean, I kind of have some questions I sort of pre-prepared for everybody, and since the 6 of us in total, only Chris and I can see each other, I'm going to try to kind of call on people as much as we can to not get too much overlap. But if you have something to say, you want to just jump in, please feel free to give that a shot.
All 4 of you are unmuted all at the same time.
I am going to leave your mics open.
Nice open conversation.
So I guess I'm going to start with kind of a general question, and I'll go through the 4 of you again as to, does your library currently have a technology plan? Are you working on one? Followed by, why do you think your library needs one? And let's go in the reverse order. Let's start with Veronica.
All right. We do sort of have a technology plan. What we do is that we plan out what projects we're going to work on for about a year in advance. So in November, I start gathering the projects that I know that we need to work on, and we put together, we have a staff wiki, and we put together a list of those projects on our staff wiki, and we get input from the staff as to whether we think a project should be taken off the list or whether there's something we haven't thought of that they need to put on the list. And then we get that approved by all the staff in the library administration, usually the beginning of January, and then that becomes our projects list for the year. You asked why we need to do planning, and one of the things that we got out of the conference was that we really want to look a little farther ahead than 1 year. And so we are looking at doing maybe a 3-year technology plan, although right now our library is in the process of doing a community needs analysis, and so we'd like to incorporate our technology into the outcomes of that survey. And in 2013 we'll begin a new 5-year master plan for the library, and with that 5-year master plan we'd like to incorporate technology planning into that. So we kind of have multiple things that we'd like to plan for.
That's great, and that's, I remember talking to you at the conference, and you do one other thing that's a little different that I'd ever heard of, and I'm going to come back to that with your yearly plan.
Okay.
But I love the fact that you stress that you want to kind of work with the larger organizations, the city, the county, the town, wherever you are, to kind of make everything fit, because it is a giant puzzle, especially depending on where your budgets come from. And especially here in Nebraska, where pretty much all the budgets are local, there aren't any districts, so it's kind of a unique experience here. Tiffany, let's go ahead and go over back to you. How about technology planning in your library?
We do have a technology plan. I created it about a year ago. We decided to go with a 3-year plan, and we're pretty on track for it. So, you know, we wanted to add more computers to our public computer lab, create some separate spaces for different age groups to access technology other than just our public lab, train training of the staff, that has kind of been a challenge. We've had a lot of turnover the last year, and we've actually have been one staff person short for about a year and a half. So that's kind of been a challenge as far as, having to take on more outside duties. But, we do revisit it every couple of months, kind of take a look at where we need to go and what we need to do with it. Something that I'm going to be looking for in the next couple of years is we really want to try to bring in some high-end software to try to draw in technology patrons that are already, online at home and have their own computers. So we want to try to get those people in here to take advantage of our technology as well. So they're definitely important to have. If you don't have it, I think you're just kind of, well, maybe we'll try this, or, you need that direction.
Yeah, in fact, just Monday when I got back, one of the emails I had to catch up on was a librarian here in the state who was saying that a patron had specifically requested a piece of software, Audacity, for those of you familiar with it, which is open source audio editing software. And basically her question was, is that safe to install on our machines? And I said, oh, yes, please. That's what we use to produce the podcasts here and do a lot of audio editing. So, yeah, that community involvement, we're 2 for 2 on the community involvement here. I love that. Is very important. So, Pam, how about you?
Is that me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Well, we certainly have a technology plan, and I think probably the driving force behind our original technology planning was E-rate, because you have to have that technology plan for E-rate. But we also have a major section of our strategic plan that we're currently working under has to do with technology and providing technology leadership to our community, and so that is certainly interwoven with the technology plan that we have. And as we go forward, we keep looking at what's in the technology plan, what's in the strategic plan, how do we make those two things mesh together, how do we find the money for it. Some of it is, some of our planning is reactionary, I will admit. When things come along like the BTOP grant, I don't know that we had the addition of as many computers as we will be getting through the BTOP grant in the technology plan until we knew about that grant. Right. So, we sort of stepped up the addition. We sort of always put in the technology plan that we're going to be adding some capability for the public, but some years it's more than others. So and that sometimes has to do with grants that are available or budgets or whatever. But, it's really important because we do not have a specific technology staff. I'm sort of in charge, but only loosely in charge. So we kind of involve everybody. Right now we're looking at some initiatives not only in terms of what the public is wanting and needing, but also what our staff needs to do their jobs better. So, those are the kinds of things that we are looking at constantly and always trying to get into the technology plan.
Right. And I want everybody who's listening to this and watching to keep in mind that Pam's point about things that come up, because when we get back to Veronica, I finally met somebody who's figured out a way to kind of plan for things that they couldn't plan for. So on that, Nicole, why don't we go to you and talk about tech planning in your library?
Well, my library has actually been really easy because I started from, ground zero with a bunch of really, really old computers that had been repaired numerous times and were just defunct. So it was really easy. The technology plan I put in place was about 3 years ago to replace all of those, and we actually went through the Gates grant, and then we will be going through the BTOP grant, and for the rest of this year, in my next 2 board meetings, we will be going over our technology plan, and you know, I write some of that out, but then my board comes into play as far as how we want to implement things. So.
Okay. Great. Yeah, and the board needs to be involved. Yes, if nothing else, probably for final approval. And I've talked to a lot of librarians where in some cases the board is not tech savvy, and other boards are tech savvy, and it can cause some very interesting issues. Okay, Veronica, I'm gonna head back to you for a few minutes here, and we talked for a little bit last week, and you told me something about your tech plan that you do that just caught me so by surprise because I'd never heard it before. You said you always include something called the Mystery Project. What is that?
Yeah, we, you know, back in 2007 actually is when we started doing this, because we realized that even though we have planned a year in advance, we have all of our projects spelled out, everybody's agreed this is what we're going to work on for the year, something always comes up that we didn't plan for, it was unscheduled, and so we decided in 2007 that we would just build in a mystery project onto our projects list, and we would plan for a mystery project. And so that's what we've done every year since. We have on our staff wiki our list of these are all the projects we're doing, and one of the projects we're doing is a mystery project. And we never know what that's going to be. It's just something that comes up during the year. It was completely unplanned for, and it could be something that we as the automation department have to take on. Like one year it happened that we had a lot of problems with the air conditioning unit in our main data closet, and we finally said this can't continue. We were down and had to move servers, and so we ended up doing a big project to buy a backup air conditioning unit and figure out a way to make that accessible so we can turn it on from home in the middle of the night, because that's always when the AC goes out. So that was our mystery project one year. Another year it was one of the other staff in the building happened to get a grant, and it had to be implemented in this year, and it was for laptops at the branch library. We had not anticipated getting this grant. We hadn't anticipated that there would even be any grant money. It was one of the years when the LSTA stuff was low, and then suddenly we had this grant, and oh yeah, by the way, you have to do it in 6 months. And so that was our mystery project for the year. There's always something that comes up, and so instead of being caught by surprise, we plan for the mystery project.
I am still floored by that. I am going to change my presentation to include that, because when Krista and I have done the technology planning talk in several locations, and we keep saying one of the reasons to plan is so that when somebody suddenly demands you do something that wasn't on the plan, you can say, well, okay, what are we not going to do from our plan to do your emergency project?
How do we work this in?
Yeah, how do we work this into our plan?
Scheduled and planned.
And you've already done it.
Yeah.
I just, and it to me anyways, it seems one of those things that's like, why didn't I think of that? You know, honestly, it seems obvious in retrospect. And now, so you've always had a mystery project every year? I mean, it just,
yeah.
There hasn't been a year where you didn't need it?
Well, so far this year, knock on wood, it is the end of August, and we haven't had a mystery project this year. This may be the first year since 2007 that it hasn't happened. But yeah, every year something has come up, and so we just leave a slot open for that. And you know, it may mean that other projects we're working on get delayed or pushed into the next year, because we never know how long that mystery project's going to take. It could be something that takes us a couple of weeks. It could be something that is more involved and takes us a couple of months. You know, we don't know. So there is, you talk about, saying, well, we're not going to do this because we have to do that. That factor still comes into play. But instead of us panicking and going, oh my God, how are we going to do this and what are we going to put off, we say, well, here's a slot for a mystery project, and if the mystery project comes up, we already know that these other 3 projects will get pushed to next year. If
Gotcha.
they don't get, if the mystery project doesn't happen, then we'll get those projects done this year. So by building in that, that contingency there, it's been a much better way for us to plan, and it makes life a little bit easier on our end to prepare for things if we know something's going to come up. It always does.
Right. And both you and Pam have mentioned that, sometimes it's a emergency and like in a bad way, and sometimes
Right.
it's emergency in a good way, and it's like, hey, we have money. So
Yeah, exactly.
That can be good. All right. I've got you all on mute here just to kind of reset. We're dealing with a couple audio issues. Krista is frantically typing away. Oh, we've got it fixed? Okay, good. We got a lot of feedback from Nebraska, and I've spent yesterday and today kind of reading through it. Chris and I have not yet seen the feedback from Colorado, but I'll assume it will be generally similar. And I'm not going to talk about feedback of the event, but kind of things that people said about what they learned that made me start thinking. And I've got a couple of folks who I'll kind of summarize here, and then I'll open it up to see who wants to maybe try to address this. In both cases, we kind of talked about that at this point we need to accept that technology is part of the library. The web is 20 years old, email's over 35 years old. It's just one of these things. We don't argue about whether we need a telephone anymore. Maybe some of us need to stop arguing that we need computers in the library. But in having that sort of conversation, some people say basically that I guess inadequate was one of the words they were using, that maybe there is too much technology. You're making me feel like I maybe even shouldn't even be in a library anymore, that sort of thing. And maybe there's kind of a training issue here. I don't really necessarily have a question. It's making my brain work overtime to address how do we address the folks that are working in libraries that are completely feeling overwhelmed by the technology. I guess maybe that's my question. And I've kind of turned all of your mics on, so if somebody wants to maybe attempt to respond to that, jump right on in. I've stumped all of you.
Michael,
something
I have to say, sorry, this is Veronica.
Okay.
I have to say I have felt that myself, and I feel like, gosh, I'm the automation coordinator for my library, so I shouldn't feel that way. But I think there's so much out there with social media. There's so much out there happening with ebooks and all the variety of ebooks, and you can't keep up with it all. I mean, you just can't. So I think the thing you have to do is focus on what do you need for your library, and then go find the technologies that are out there that answer your needs.
Mm-hmm. Was there somebody else there that had something?
Yeah, this is Tiffany in Alliance, and I guess, when you're looking at smaller libraries out in this area where I am, it's very rural, and the staff has a lot on their plate, and it is overwhelming when you think about, I need to do this and this and this and this and this, and I need to catalog and work circulation, and so I guess it's just stepping back and saying, okay, realistically, I'm working as hard as I can to get it done, and this is what I can get done, and stop being so hard on ourselves. We've had to really do that and say, if you get just something little done and it makes a big difference, or, take that as an accomplishment and then move on to the next.
This is Pam. I was going to say that's another reason why technology planning is so important, because you can build into that baby steps toward bigger goals and help your staff see, okay, let's just worry about trying to make sure that everybody knows how to do, whatever it is. Like one of the things that I'm looking at is we're getting the ADA workstation. One of the first things that I'm going to have to make sure is that everybody who works at the desk and helps in public service knows how to use all of that ADA software. And that's going to be a major training push. But you have to prioritize and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. The other thing is, if you have the luxury, like I do, of having several people on your staff, you want everybody to have a general knowledge, but you also need to identify people who have specialized knowledge that you can turn to, so that when somebody comes in with an ebook reader who needs help with it, we know that there are 3 or 4 people on the staff who, it's like whoever's available can help that person.
Mm-hmm.
This is Veronica. One of the things that Pam mentioned was that staff training, and that's something that we actually are going to build into our technology plan, and that was something in the documentation that Michael and Krista handed out at our technology conference here in Colorado that I really found valuable, because in the past we have done staff training, and we've sort of said, oh yeah, if we implement this new technology there has to be training, but we haven't really planned for that and made that an integral part of the rollout of our new technology. And so that will be a piece that we'll be working on now for the future, is putting staff training into the plan.
Okay. Yeah, staff training. That and I think I will throw up another one of these open-ended questions, and maybe for Nicole and Tiffany, who are at the smaller libraries of the folks that we have on our call. Okay, where do you find the time?
You just have to make time. You have to, and that's kind of what I've really been pushing, especially in the last, after going to the conference. It's not an option. You have to learn this. It can't just be somebody. Here I know the ebooks very well. I'm very good with helping the patrons. So sometimes they think, oh well, Tiffany knows how to do this. Come back when she's in the office, and that's just that can't work. You send them away, and what if that's, I'm not here usually after 5. If that's the only time they can come in, staff has to be able to deal with that. And so I've been taking time every week and sitting down and going through the online databases, the e-readers, making sure that they know everything that they need to know to help people when they come in. So you just have to make time.
I guess for me, I really like a lot of this stuff, so I enjoy doing it on my off time, so I bring that back into the library. My hardest part is keeping things simplified enough that the people at my library, where we're a pretty impoverished area, are able to understand and follow suit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is one thing that I always think about this and never think about adding it to our tech planning talks or just our learning about technology discussions, that personal professional development is important. And you know what? It's not always going to be when you're on the clock necessarily at your job. You read your library magazines at home, possibly, your journals, your whatever.
Right.
When I'm at home on the computer, I don't block out reading things that happen to be about libraries, because they just kind of come up in my reader or whatever, or on there, and I'm like, hey, I'm into libraries, let's read that article. And it may be 10 o'clock at night, and I learned something new. Cool. So it's like Nora said, you just make the time, and it may be time when you're on your own. If you're a librarian, it's your thing.
Yeah, and I will stress that I usually whenever I'm giving these talks and the where do you find the time comes up, I feel like I have to give this disclaimer where it's I have a 40-hour-a-week job in which I get to learn all this stuff and then teach it. It is my job to do this. So don't ever try to judge how much you think you need to find playtime or learning time or whatever based on me, because I I get paid to do that. It is my job, and I understand. My wife works in the library, and I know what she has to do to try to keep up. And she's like, she's not working as a cataloger at the moment, but she's been a cataloger for years. So in fact, her day job is not cataloging, but she still tries to keep up with what's going on in cataloging. And she doesn't really get to do that at work. She's in a branch where at best there's 2 or 3 people on staff at any one time. She does everything there. Granted, it's Lincoln Cities, so they have an infrastructure, but at the branch level, she doesn't have time to sit back and read a journal. She's checking out books and helping people with reference questions and doing all those other things. And I've worked reference desks. I know how busy it is. So, and Pam, thank you for mentioning that the baby steps issue. I mean, it's the one thing I like to stress is, as many of you have said, is find the things that are going to make the most impact and focus on those. You don't have to learn everything. But there is kind of a base level that most people working in a library today, I think, need to know.
And one thing I mentioned in our sessions is there is a lot of new technology, web stuff, social networking stuff out there. Find out what your community members are using already or what they are interested in and focus on that. Don't focus on the big library in, wherever. Denver is doing this, so, oh my gosh, we need to. That may be great for them, but for you it may be something different that your community and your users are really into. Find out what that is and focus on that to help connect with your actual users.
Right.
We do have one comment from someone in the audience. Oops, sorry, I knocked over your little guy. It's not really a question, it's just a comment, just someone kind of reaffirming what we were talking about, if you want to.
I am the network administrator and programmer for the library. I build programs that are simple and always make sure staff is available to assist patrons with anything. I also assist patrons with all their tech needs, like ebooks or any digital resources. Cool.
Yeah. I like to think about building programs that are simple. If you're lucky enough to have a programmer for your library that can do these kind of things for you, that's great. Yeah.
Yep. So, and
hey, Michael, something that came to mind, and I don't know if this is available everywhere or just here in Colorado, but there is a website, and I may have to look it up for you and email it to you later. It's Library 2.0, where staff can go online, and there are certain lessons that they have to follow through, and it's sort of things like what is LinkedIn, what is a blog, and they have to kind of take a short they read about it, they have to kind of do something, so they're completing a little online course, and then it's all part of a bigger package where they get a certificate at the end.
Yeah, we do something like that here in Colorado. We've done a couple different ones, the Learning 2.0 programs, and we're, as Krista mentioned earlier, with the professional development, we're participating in a kind of multinational professional development program like that.
Yeah. Some people might have heard of it as being called the 23 Things programs, where you have a thing a week that you learn, and it's a short period. You learn all these different little chunks. One lesson, assignment, whatever, a week. Learn, just pay attention to that one thing. Spend 2 hours that week focusing on that one thing, and someone else has created the information about it and the lesson and the instructions and the little practice thing you can do, so you don't have to try and figure out that yourself, and then you just follow it and do it, and you've learned possibly something new and useful to you. Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I went through that Nebraska Learns, and I loved it. The first time that we did it, it was great. And what I liked is the fact that it wasn't just, it's not just for library staff. Encourage your patrons to participate in it. And, it's a great way for anybody who wants to learn more about what's available to go. I love it. It was just wonderful.
Yeah, and I realize this is kind of a bigger library as big libraries go, but Boston Public, where we have a friend, they're running a public 23 Things right now for their patrons, and we'll be seeing our friend in a couple weeks, and I'm going to corner her and say, how'd that go? It is available online. I don't have the URL off the top of my head, but there are libraries that are doing it for their public. Now, if you're a small library of 2 or 3 staff, it's enough to get it done for yourself, let alone the public. But you could point them to Boston's. I mean, they are doing a lot of these things.
We'll find the link and add it when the recording goes up for this session. We have a list of website links. We'll find the Boston Public one and add it to that, so you'll have it afterwards.
Okay. All right, so here's kind of my next question, and this is something that Krista and I mentioned in our presentations at the two conferences, and I didn't ask any of our speakers to specifically look at this list in advance, and I should have done that, but mentions this list from Sarah Houghton Gem, who's in California. This was on the ALA Learning Roundtable blog, and what she had kind of done was, speaking of what training needs to be done, she had put together this list of suggested things that every librarian should know today regarding technology. And so, basic terms, as you can see here, just, use of the photocopier, use of the telephone, use of the fax machines, self-checks if you have them. But then as kind of the list goes down, there are many things such as basics of word processing, basics of web browsers, basics of calendaring software. Getting a little further, she even says basics of video editing, audio editing, and photo editing of things. And again, I'll kind of throw this to the group, what are some of the things that you think all library staff should know to successfully work in a library today?
Anymore, I think definitely e-readers. That is one of, technology-wise, that's one of the most common questions every day. Somebody coming in wanting to know, how do I check out ebooks? How do I use my e-reader?
Okay. Yeah, I would completely agree with that one.
The thing, this is Veronica, the thing we find in our library that is huge is that people don't know how to save up to a file. If they bring in a flash drive, they don't know how to plug it in. They don't know how to take it out. They don't know how to find it and save it. So I think that generally all staff need to absolutely know, how do you deal with a flash drive? How does it show up? How do you help patrons save their file to the flash drive instead of to the computer where it's going to get lost when it gets rebooted?
Ooh, very good point. And more, I'm reminded of the joke about, the save icon is still a floppy disk. What,
Right.
Yeah. How many of our computers, what the heck is a floppy disk? In Google Docs now, it just says save. So, what's going to replace the floppy disk is the save icon. Pam or Nicole, do you have any ideas?
Again, my area is fairly low income, so I'm helping people just with basic computer stuff. How do I set up a Facebook account? How do I set up an email address? How do I use this software, that software? Just I think that this list, where it is a very broad list, is huge.
Yeah.
I really think that's huge. Some of it's not really. I mean, I don't know how to use the reservation software on a bigger library, but some of that's not really applicable to us on a smaller scale, but just a really broad basic knowledge list of all kinds of things is very helpful.
Well, right, which is why for this and like a lot of other things that you learn in bits and pieces, this is, like you said, a huge broad list. And I think Sarah was trying to think like a brainstorming of every possible thing that could come to her mind that might be something a library somewhere might need. And what you can do in whatever size library you are, pick from this list what applies to your library. You don't have reservation software. Obviously, you don't need to know how to use it. Pick and choose from this list. And it might probably have a lot of things that you're like, yeah, of course. But there might be the one or two things that you're like, oh, we do that, but we didn't think about it. Make sure it's one of our competencies for our staff.
Well, and like just this one I'm highlighting right here, does every single person on your staff know the URL for the library's website? Or do they all just click home and they know that works?
Yeah.
But somebody might ask, what is the URL? And if you get a staff member going, I just click home, the impression might not be good to the patron, sort of.
But that's why we have it plastered on every single possible printed web, everything piece of material we have, is so that not only do the public see it, but the staff sees it. one of the things I think this list is very interesting, and I think for the most part it's pretty good, although there's, again, a lot of stuff on here that doesn't necessarily, we don't have video editing capability at this time, so
right, exactly.
I'm not going to worry about that one. But I was very interested in the presentation that Mary Jo did about benchmarks for technology services and the possibility that down the road we're going to be looking at some kind of way to measure what are basic technology services that are being offered by libraries, what are sort of, I guess I'm looking at it in terms of sort of like accreditation, that these are basic services, these would be enhanced services, these would be top of the line kind of services. But one of the things that I think is very interesting about that is each of our libraries is a little different in terms of what we offer, what our communities expect. Obviously, a library that has an IT or department of 2.5 people, which I'm very jealous.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Can do different things than a library where you have one person who's doing everything, including all kinds of public services and technology. But I do think it's important. One thing I think is very important is that in your library you need to decide what's important, and you need to facilitate your staff understanding what's important and also facilitate their learning those things. Ebook, we decided when we first started with Overdrive it was just audio books. So we made sure that we had an MP3 player that staff could take home and practice with and get to know what an MP3 player did and how you downloaded books on it and all that kind of stuff. We've done the same thing with e-readers. So we have a couple of e-readers that staff can take home and practice with. And I think it's very important that if you've identified specific technologies, you need to make sure that you facilitate your staff either learning. You hope that they learn, you can teach them during the workday, but the reality is there's not enough hours in the day. So you have to encourage them to learn some of this stuff on their own time.
And I think the critical piece of that is that they play with it on their tried it. They know then when a patron comes in, they can say, oh yeah, you got to push this button, you got to do that because
yes.
Right.
When they're trying, if the patron count would be like, if it weren't for the technology, more than half of technology. Okay, technology. We are really going to try to do that.
I'm going to specifically just Pam, I've unmuted you. Can you hear me right now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and were you hearing Tiffany just a moment ago talking?
I was.
Okay, then the problem was completely on our end. So we'll just
ignore us.
Yeah, we were having problems. Well, sounds like everybody else wasn't. So that's good. Okay, we're kind of running close to our time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pick your brains all one at a time again. And just if there's anything else you want to say, wrap up, something you think would be important that I didn't ask and you want to address, that sort of thing. And why don't we go in the same order we started in? So Nicole, why don't we start with you?
Golly, I just think that it's really important to focus on what our patrons need. So much of it, so much of the technology that is out there is so interesting, and it's really engrossing, and it's easy to get overwhelmed with. But I've got to kind of turn around and really need help and want that focus placed. That would be my, yeah.
Okay. Pam, how about you?
I think the one thing that we haven't touched on that is very important to me is we need to work on the whole, the funding and sustainability of technology. Tiffany talked about it a little bit with talking about changing priorities and needing to put more resources where our public is and what our public wants. But I think trying to build into, I know for us, that's always been a real problem, is trying to build sustainable funds for technology. And so that's something that we really need to work on and look at.
Yeah, that's almost kind of the next stage, especially all the getting
that's like
these
a whole nother program.
Yes, and we're a lot of us here are thinking about the whole then staff training issues and all these other things. So yes, I'm sure we'll have other programs coming up on all of this. Tiffany, how about you?
Yeah, I think it is. It's going to be that we have to change the way people look at the library, not so much our patrons, because they know what they're coming for. We need to change the people that are directing the money, and I think that's going to come from talking to the community and getting the communities to speak up about what they want, where they want to see us going, what we can do so that they want to come in and be a part of the library committee. And through their voices, hopefully then the voices of those doing the funding or people, that want to donate are going to be more apt to do that.
Okay. Great. Yeah, funding. I mean, that's what else is there to say? We need more money. Okay, and Veronica, how about you?
I think what the other presenters have said is just so true. We're, as I mentioned at the beginning, in the middle of that community needs analysis that we're doing this year and trying to find out exactly what our users need and how do we plan our technology to meet what they're asking for. And sometimes that's really difficult because this whole thing with ebooks that sort of blew up last year, we're rushing to get budgets, and how do we sustain those budgets? If we put money in it this year, is there going to be money next year? How do we get our staff trained fast enough on all the different devices that patrons are bringing in our door? And that's the difficulty right now, is that we can't, we're playing a little bit of catch up. We had planned to some extent, but not to the extent that particular technology has really exploded on the scene. And so, I think even if we do our planning, the difficulty with technology is that you can't plan too far in advance. You plan like we do. We plan for a year. We're looking at expanding that to planning for 3 years, but you really can't anticipate what's going to happen. Even in year 3, I'm kind of like, I don't know what really is coming down the pike. And so I think one of the things you mentioned at our conference was to try to be flexible. And that's really the key, I think, with technology, is trying to be flexible and say, well, if this is really what the patron demand is, how are we going to respond to that? What are we going to change? What are we going to do to meet their needs? And I think that flexibility in the planning is key. But, that's the difficult part to build in. So
yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Flexibility when you don't know what's coming is definitely going to be an issue. All right. Have we gotten any other questions or comments from the audience, Krista?
Oh, we do have a comment.
Okay, comment.
From Tricia Perry, who's from Oldham County Public Library, which I just looked it up, is in Kentucky.
Woohoo! All right.
Said she's actually very happy. Yep, Kentucky. She just confirmed it. Has said it's been pretty cool. It has been overwhelming as I was just tossed into this position in January. Thanks for showing me I'm not alone.
You are
and
not
bringing
alone.
up some good ideas. Staff training has been an issue, and some of your ideas have been very helpful.
Yeah,
and that's common. Staff turnover of anybody, the IT person, the director. Yeah, what do you got to be able to pick it up?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think maybe the last thought on this topic that I'll throw in is that a reminder that as librarians, most of us share well with others. And you can, if you're looking for, say, looking for what does our staff know or not know, look up library needs analysis or lists. of here's the survey we did of our staff. Now, it may not exactly fit your staff, but those surveys are out there. So in some cases, the results are out there. Look, go to Google, type in library technology plan. You will find dozens of plans that libraries have put up on their websites, generally for their public to read, but hey, you know, read them and get some ideas from there, or even if it's just the structure of a tech plan, something like that. And then when you've written yours and you've done all this, please put it up on your website so that other people can find it, and we can all help each other out. I think that's probably one of the greatest resources out there. And, you know, just ask. Most of us are more than happy to talk about what we've done in our libraries. So we've got a few minutes left of time. I just right off the top want to thank Nicole, Pam, Tiffany, and Veronica for taking some time out of their day to share their thoughts and ideas with us. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad every time I can find anybody to come on the call and help us out to share the information that we all have. I want to thank all four of you again for participating in this. Now, as normally with Tech Talk, we usually take a couple of minutes at the end for me to kind of talk about some news and some resources and some sites. And I've just got a few that I want to share with everybody today. So if you bear with me here, I'm going to try to get all of the right size. There we go. And so we do have links to the resources, the presentations from both the BEST conference in Colorado and the Technology Planning Summer Camp in Nebraska. So we will provide links to those. And for the interest of bandwidth, I'm going to kind of shut some of these down here. We will also have the links posted with the recording for a few, for those two and a few other things I just want to talk about very briefly here as we're kind of running out of time. One is in a previous Tech Talk, I have talked about a Firefox plugin called HTTPS Everywhere. This is a plugin that if you install in Firefox, if you go to a website that offers unsecured connections and secured connections, this will automatically redirect you to secure location logins and versions of the website. We talked about Firesheep in one particular episode where people can, you know, get to Facebook. Basically, especially if you're on open Wi-Fi, logging into websites securely is very important. So that's something you might want to take a look at. The next one down is a app for iPhone, iPad, Androids, and for the three of you that probably have a Windows Phone 7 phone out there. This is kind of cool. I installed this on my phone, and it will alert me to what's going on with my computer back home or another computer. You install a program on the computer, the app on your phone, and if the computer spontaneously reboots itself, I get a notification. If hard drives reach a certain capacity, there are literally dozens upon dozens of notifications that you can have it send you on your phone. So some of the more techies in the room who want to keep an eye on particular computers, this might be an option for you to go with. This next option here, which is listed as discover the most engaging and relevant content lost in your social streams, that's actually for a service that I will bring up here because I've completely forgotten the name of the service. It's called Know About It. And what this will do is I give it access to things such as Twitter, Facebook, and then what I do is I get a daily email of kind of the most shared things on those services. So maybe I haven't quite followed all of my feeds for the day. I haven't logged into Facebook. I haven't looked at Twitter. But once a day I will get an email of kind of like, here are the things that were talked about the most of all the people you follow from the previous day. It's a very interesting service, and in some cases it points me to things that I missed. So just kind of another way to kind of filter the material through to your inbox as opposed to that. And our computer has completely frozen. The one that I'm looking at here, I'm going to look at Krista to see if we are sending through. So at that point, I think since the screen we're looking at is completely locked up, although no, it just caught up with me. Let me just talk about two other things real quick. One is Collusion. Collusion is a very interesting visualization tool that will allow you to track kind of how you're being tracked online. So what services are setting cookies on your machine, what advertising services are following you, and the connections between the websites you visit. So what you actually do is you start this running, and then you surf for a couple of hours, and then you can go back and you can see all the connections between all the different sites and all the different tracking.
That will scare the crap out of some people.
It might scare you, yes. So I will just, it's out there, it's a tool. And then the last one, Google Scholar Citations. For those of us who might have done any writing in the past, published some things, Google Scholar is really cool for tracking that, but what you can actually do now is set up a profile page in Google Scholar for your publications and track citations. It's just kind of a new sort of, I set it up because I could. This would really pretty much only apply to people who have actually, published material, which I have. So those are my resources for today, for this month. We will provide all of those links, so don't worry about it. You didn't get all the URLs. As usual, when the recording goes out, you'll get an email for those of you who signed up. We will include links to all of these resources and the things that we talked about during the session. And with that, that is the end of my Tech Talk.
Okay. Thank you very much, Michael. And once again, thank you to our 4 speakers. It was great. You guys came in at the last minute to help us with this.
Yes.
We really appreciate it. It's always nice when, I love it when a plan comes together. He
Yes,
said that.
there we go. Hannibal.
Yes.
From the 18th. Yes.
That was, I stole that from Laura Johnson. I'm going to give my citation site where it's, she was a presenter at our tech planning thing last week. And just want to, yes, that will wrap it up for this week's Tech Talk, this week's NCompass Live, which was our Tech Talk, and I want to invite you to join us next week when our topic is Every Child Ready to Read at Your Library. This is a parent education initiative about early literacy with your children, and our Jessica Chamberlain, the director of our Northeast Library System, will be here to tell us about the program and highlight all the things you can use from it in your library.
Great.
So that will be next week's NCompass Live, same time, 10 a.m. Wednesday morning. So hopefully we will see you then. Thank you very much.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye.